to Unknown Capital. This Saturday, we have UFC Fight Night. We have the Korean Zombie versus Brian Ortega. And we just wanted to give our thoughts of who's going to win this fight. Let's get right into the video. Brian Ortega has just come back from a 2-year layoff where his last fight he lost against the champion at the time, Max Holloway.
Oh, he's making wobbling. Oh, right hand. Oh, nice knee. Very good knee. Oh.
And then he had the Korean Zombie coming back in 2017, having served in the military for Korea. And since 2017, he's had 4 fights where he's won 3 and lost 1. This puts both these fighters highly ranked in the division, where the Korean Zombie is ranked 4th and you have Brian Ortega ranked 2nd. And this fight determines who gets the title shot for the featherweight belt. Who is the next threat for Alexander Volkanovski?
So let's start with Korean Zombie's UFC debut. He had one of the best UFC debuts where he submitted his opponent Leonard Garcia with this weird twisted choke, and he got his revenge because Leonard Garcia defeated him in WEC 48.
He locks the hold of Leonard's hands, or his hands rather, around Leonard's head, and he is just contorting his...
Good stuff, Korean Zombie. Korean Zombie had a really good second fight where he knocked out his opponent Mark Omek in 7 seconds. And the hype was just real. And to make things even better, in his third fight, he put Dustbin Poirier in a dirty DOS choke and he submitted him.
Takedown. The uppercut in the knee. Really putting Poirier in a bad spot.
He's in the dark choke right now. He can finish this. This is a choke.
So after this, he got a one-way ticket to Rio de Janeiro to fight the champion, Jose Aldo. And Jose Aldo was levels ahead of him in that fight, where he dominated from round 1 to round 4. And even though Korean Zombie dislocated his shoulder in round 4, it was too late for him, because anytime Korean Zombie would throw, Jose Aldo would just wait and counter. And this was prominent throughout the whole fight. And Jose Aldo made him look like a schoolboy. So after losing to Jose Aldo, the Korean Zombie took a 4-year layoff to treat his dislocated shoulder and do his compulsory South Korean military service. And this is where he got a second wind. So the Korean Zombie had one of the best UFC returns where he KO'd Dennis Bermudez.
Underneath with the right uppercut. Take another look. Bam, slip, boom. And catches him. Unbelievable.
That KO was so dazed that Dennis Bermudez woke up in a different dimension. So after having the perfect UFC return, Korean Zombie got KO'd by Yair Rodriguez with some dirty elbows.
It was an elbow. Oh my God. Oh my God. What an elbow from Yair Rodriguez.
And this showed how vulnerable Korean Zombie was, and people started questioning if he was a real fucking deal. So after getting KO'd, Korean Zombie came back with vengeance, where he TK'd Moicano, where he demonstrated his boxing skills, where he used his overhand, his cross, and he made Moicano look like a schoolboy.
Him, if you can believe it.
So after TKOing Moicano, the UFC decided to give the Korean Zombie Frankie Edgar. And Frankie Edgar is respected in the UFC. Whenever someone says Frankie Edgar, everyone knows he's a real deal. And guess what the Korean Zombie does? TKO him as well. The Korean Zombie is such a nightmare to fight because he has an arsenal of skills where he's a black belt in Taekwondo, a black belt in Judo, and a brown belt in Jiu-Jitsu. The Korean Zombie has very underrated grappling skills where he has a takedown defense of 75%, and he submitted in his UFC debut Leonard Garcia with this weird twister, and it was brutal, and then submitting Dustbin Poirier by this really good DOS choke.
So let's move on to Brian Ortega. Before Max Holloway, this man was running through the featherweight division, starting his dominance from Traores. Although he did have his UFC debut in 2014, he did win that fight, but they found out he was on that juice. And we all know what happens when you're on that juice. He got ruled out as a no contest. After Brian Ortega got off those steroids, his true dominance started off with Traores. Traores in that fight dominated the first and the second round. And as a fighter, when you've dominated the first or second round, you start to think, the third round is close to the end of the fight. This is going to be an easy win for me. But no, this is where Brian Ortega turns up the pace. And when he did, he ended up TKOing Traores.
Strikes. He's hurt. Brian Ortega trying to finish this fight.
And of course, in that third and final round, Brian Ortega proved to be too much yet again.
T-City still undefeated.
And this created this recurring theme where Brian Ortega just wins it in the third round now. In his 6-fight win streak, 4 of those fights he won in the third round. Brandao, Moicano, Guida, and Traores. All these fighters were dominating the first and second round against Ortega. But somehow Ortega starts to turn it around, either submits them or KOs them in the third round. This shows Brian Ortega's heart and that belief that he can win it at the end. If you look at the Moicano fight especially, Moicano was outlanding him, outstriking him, and the fact that Brian Ortega allowed that much damage, he just knew that he was going to win at the end. And Moicano, stupidly in the third round, goes for that takedown.
He just finished that fight in about...
He didn't need to. He could just stay at the feet and won that fight. But no, he goes for that takedown. And this is where Brian Ortega does the dirty work. If you get too close to him, if you try to take him down, he will go for your neck and choke you out, submit you out. And this is what exactly he did against Moicano.
5 seconds. I mean, his jiu-jitsu is sensational.
And Brian Ortega wins a great victory. And he wins it at the end. And this was shown throughout his 6-fight win streak. Funnily enough, that third round dominance was even shown in the Max Holloway fight. Max Holloway dominated that first and second round, but most of Brian Ortega's successes came in that third round. Again, in that third round, Brian Ortega was able to land that spinning elbow and that great 1-2 cross that wobbled Max Holloway. And was able to take down Max Holloway. But at the beginning of the fourth, Max Holloway looked at Joe Rogan and he was like, right now, TKO, right now. And then Max Holloway completely dominates that fourth. And that type of volume, that type of amount of strikes, no human can take that. So obviously the doctor had to rule it out for Brian Ortega. But Brian Ortega, throughout his UFC career, has shown a lot of heart, that belief to win it at the end, which makes him like a tough contender in the featherweight, and now he's back to get that title shot. But when we move on to his striking, Brian Ortega isn't the most accurate striker, only having a striking accuracy of 34%. But what really helps him on the feet is the fact that he has a tough chin. He can take a lot of damage and nothing really disturbs him, like the fact that a flurry of punches can come from his opponents, but he will stand there and counter with you, he will exchange with you. That toughness really helps him on the feet, and that's why it's so hard to put someone like Brian Ortega away. And then when he makes you think that you've got him in the third round, after you've dominated Brian Ortega for the first round and the second, he will come back at you at that third round with that pressure, either submitting you or end up KOing you when you least expect it. And this is the brilliance of Brian Ortega. We think the winner of this fight is going to be Korean Zombie. And the reason why we think that is because throughout his career, he has evolved in his striking especially. When he started off against Leonard Garcia, being that wild card, swinging, not really thinking through his punches, he moves on to really adapting to have really good head movement, where we see in Moicano, against Moicano, the way he knocked him out, when Moicano throws that jab and he ducks and he throws that overhead and he ducks again to avoid Moicano's cross, and he was able to land a cross of his own with his left hand. You can see that he's evolved. He thinks to his punches and nothing affects him. Even in the Frankie Edgar fight, for example, he was on him, waiting, went to counter. As soon as Frankie Edgar closes the distance, he just throws his own combos, able to finish him as well with the TKO.
Yeah, I just think that Brian Ortega is very reckless and he always keeps his chin open, and from all his fights we've seen that he absorbs a lot of punches. There's a stat which says that he absorbs 7.44 strikes per minute, which is 35 strikes per round, and in an old fight that's 175 strikes landed. And if you have the power like Korean Zombie, you can easily catch Brian Ortega and can easily make him have an early night and TKO or KO him. There are many ways Brian Ortega can win this fight. This 2-year layoff can make him realize how good of a grappler he is. Brian Ortega is one of those people who doesn't do all the fancy stuff like Khabib, but he's world class at all the basic grappling, and this can trouble Korean Zombie.
And when it comes to Korean Zombie, the main danger is that if he was to lean in way too forward and make that neck exposed, then he could get choked out really easily, and he'll get submitted. And that's probably the only danger I can think of that Brian Ortega can use to his advantage. But honestly, from this fight, I personally think that Korean Zombie is going to win by either a decision or maybe even a TKO. Thanks for watching, guys. This fight is super important for the featherweight division because we need to know who the next challenger is for Alexander Volkanovski's title.
Should have been Max Holloway.
Oh, please, I don't want to go back to that, please. I don't want to talk about that ever again. But anyway, for these two fighters, for the Korean Zombie and Brian Ortega, they're both desperate to get that title shot again as they failed once before.
I agree with everything you're saying. So guys, please like, subscribe, comment who do you think is going to win. And thanks for watching. See you later.
Take care.